Oh man, welcome back to Gen X Horror. We talk about all things 70s and 80s nostalgia and bangers. Today we're diving into absolute mind melters that defined underground horror for 80s kids brave enough to venture past the new releases wall. These aren't your sanitized Netflix algorithm picks. We're talking genuine VHS obscurities that you had to special order or trade bootleg copies of at horror conventions. So crack open that bottle of Zima, adjust Betamax's tracking, and lock in because we're taking a nostalgic ride through some of the most unhinged films that few have heard of. Alright, let's get into it, gang.
Will you stop messing around and seduce me like a man? Oh, Tom, take that bloody mask off. Take me to bed.
Keep the suit on, my man. Nothing says Christmas cheer quite like a slasher flick set at a sorority house during winter break. And To All a Good Night delivers exactly the kind of holiday horror that made parents question what their kids were watching in the basement while drunk Aunt Sylvia was trolling the mistletoe upstairs. A group of horny students staying behind for Christmas vacation start getting picked off by a killer dressed as Santa Claus because Silent Night Deadly Night wasn't the first to have this genius idea. All stemming from a hazing prank gone horribly wrong 2 years earlier that left a girl dead. It's close to Black Christmas meets Friday the 13th with a banger Yuletide body count. This was director David Hess's only shot at directing. David Hess from Last House on the Left. And you could tell he learned everything about pacing and atmosphere from exactly 0 film school classes. But either way, man, the kills are creative enough, but scattered between long stretches of college kids being annoying. Though when the violence hits, it's genuinely nasty, and throat slashings and creative uses of garden tools and great jump scares. It was Chicago-born Jennifer Runyon's film debut, and she didn't know that Harry Reams, the pilot, was a famous adult movie star until someone on the set told her. And with his past titles like For Your Thighs Only and Horror of the Worlds, you'd love to know how that topic came up. Man, let's get into these reviews. We're going to start with a 10 out of 10. Not a big reviewer, but this is a very early 80s slasher, and I think this movie's pretty decent. I kind of figured out who the killer was around the middle of the movie. I think this movie deserves a higher ranking than 4.7. That's insane. I'm going to agree with my man. As an excerpt from a much longer 1 out of 10 review, that sounds like a 10 out of 10 review to me. To All a Good Night is probably the rarest Christmas revenge slasher from the 1980s. Wow, what a treat. It manages to drop the audience straight into the action with barely a minute's worth of backstory, as if you're woken up in a field with a concussion and no recollection of the events that precluded your dilemma. Look, that sounds great. Let's get into it. Anyway, shot in only 10 days on a $70,000 budget with actors who were clearly cast more for their willingness to work cheap than their actual talent, the whole thing has that raw, unpolished quality that makes the murder scenes feel more transgressive, like you're watching something that barely made it past quality control, but we're super glad it did. The real kicker is that final revelation about the killer's identity, which makes absolutely zero logical sense, but commits so hard to the twist that you just have to respect. Plus, that Santa suit covered in blood became an iconic image for any kid trolling the horror section looking for the most inappropriate holiday viewing to impress the cousins with coming for turkey. Man, I'm excited about this one, guys. Picture this. You're at a sleepover, it's 1986, and your friend pulls out a tape with literally no label except Splatter Farm written in Sharpie, and you just knew you were about to watch something that'd get you all grounded if anyone's mom walked in. And in this case, hell, maybe even arrested. Two city boys visit their creepy aunt's farm and quickly discover she's got more secrets than Nixon, some alive and some very much dead. This is 100% the film you and your friends Brian and Jeff would make if any one of you came across a camcorder on a hot, boring summer afternoon. This thing was shot on literally zero budget, man. There's nothing that I could find online at all. It was filmed in upstate New York by directors Mark and John Polonia, who were literally teenagers making this in their backyard with their friends. The ultimate kids with the camera gore project that somehow got distributed on VHS. We're going to go with the 10 out of 10 review, and they should all be 10 out of 10s just for what this is. This shot on video classic has it all. Twin brothers, corpses, incest, gore, horse mutilation, knives in toilets, a full frontal nude man being buried in the dirt, fart jokes, kids choking on poison, a word I can't even say, I don't think, and tons of other fun stuff. Highly recommend if you could find it. It's brilliant, right down to the ending credits, which continue to play the film's score even after the credits are over. It's a groundbreaker. I can't disagree with any of that. 1 out of 10. I'm gonna be honest. These 1 out of 10s are selling it more than the 10 out of 10s. 1 out of 10 review. No twist, no suspense, just people dying. I'm a fan of movies where a lot of people die, but I like suspense and a twist ending. And hell, a plot. The only shred of a plot was about the aunt's husband being murdered. Whatever, man. The grainy video quality, non-existent acting, and absolutely bonkers gore effects, man. Mostly achieved with what appears to be every condiment in their parents' fridge and a wild use of chocolate pudding. Give it this raw, primal energy that glossier horror movies just couldn't ever touch. It felt genuinely dangerous, like a snuff film your brain kept insisting couldn't be fake, even though you could clearly see the Caro syrup that was without a doubt Heinz 57 packets stolen from the local McDonald's over the course of probably a week.
We hadn't been in town 5 minutes when everybody knew who we were and where we came from.
1987's Evil Town, and I saw this one on Daily Motion after hunting high and low for it, so you could check it out there. Nothing screams quality VHS fine quite like a movie that sat on a shelf for 7 years before getting dumped to video with zero fanfare. And Evil Town is the king of troubled productions, man. Young travelers break down in a small town, which is already a red flag if you've watched any 80s horror movies, and discover the locals are kidnapping people for mad scientist experiments that turn victims into mindless zombies, more or less. A little less, but they are mindless. Here's where it gets wild. This movie was actually shot in 1977 by director Marty Rustam, who produced The Corpse Grinders, which is another awesome film about a cat food company using corpses during a shortage, which turns cats bloodthirsty, but that is way an aside. It sat incomplete for years, then got picked up and finished with new footage directed by Curtis Hanson and Larry Spiegel, who had a whole different agenda, God bless him, resulting in a Frankenstein's monster of a film where you can literally see the different film stocks and acting styles clash mid-scene, not to mention the clothing, the hairstyles, and the vehicles. This is the film debut of playmate Linda Westmeyer, and man, did she show up with both cannons blazing. 4 out of 10. This is a narrow margin, man. This is the highest rating. This movie is a mess and I love it. A glorious four-director thrown together junk fest that started filming in 1984, as well as containing footage coming from an unfinished Dean Jagger movie made a decade before. God bless Dr. Shaggets. Then to spice things up, Gary Graver's wife and Fonzie's girlfriend Lorraine, Jillian Kessner Graver, and Playboy Playmate of the Month for June 1982, Linda Westmeyer show up for the foreign sales. That's a lot. 2 out of 10 is the lowest, so there weren't 1 out of 10s. Again, narrow margin. Awful, watched and plain lousy. Apparently this film was cut together from the remnants of 3 unfinished films. Maybe you wouldn't guess it right away. There's plenty of films out there that are an incoherent mess, but the ending really makes the film look like it was never finished. I've only been recently adding reviews, but I haven't come across a margin this narrow yet. Most all reviews mention boobs, and that's fair because aside from the movie being made from 2 movies from different decades, it's really what brings the whole thing together, like Lebowski's rug. The cast includes a young James Quiche and Dean Jagger slumming it for what was probably a weekend's work, but the real star is this absolute narrative chaos. Plot threads appear and then vanish, characters change motivations just randomly, and the whole thing has this disjointed nightmare logic that honestly makes it more unsettling than if it had been completely made. You'll fast forward through the 1977 scenes to the more raunchy 80s scenes for the boob guys and even for the feet freaks. This title really tried to cast a wide net. I'd love to see both movies cut back out and then made whole independently, as they would both be bangers, but for completely different reasons.
You know something? You are a beautiful lady.
Now we're going to talk about 1981's Absurd. And Joe D'Amato cranked out Absurd, the unofficial sequel to his earlier gut muncher, Anthropophagus. And while I had a load of help on a prior video saying Anthropophagus, it was less the pronunciation that threw me, and more that in some places it was titled Antropophagus. without the H. That's wildly unrelated, but maybe it's a foreign language thing. A nearly indestructible killer played by genre favorite George Eastman, who also wrote it, with regenerative abilities, escapes from a priest and goes on a murder spree that focuses on one family's house during the most inconvenient babysitting gig in horror history. This thing was banned as a video nasty in the UK, which was basically the greatest marketing a VHS tape could get because every kid immediately wanted to know what was so forbidden about it. And it turns out everything. From pickaxes through heads to that infamous oven scene that still makes you wince, but there's zero nudity, which is a D'Amato trademark I regret him ditching for this one. Talk about the reviews, we're going to go 10 out of 10. Fiercely independent genre filmmaker, prolific purveyor and salacious cinema, and hugely gifted DP, the majestically macabre movie maestro Joe D'Amato demonstratively increases lurid legend with this head-drillingly demented bestiality bonkers eyeball-popping, grisly 80s splatterfest. Absurd. Oh, man. I'd love to meet that guy. 1 out of 10. Come on, man. Terrible acting, stupid story, and the Pittsburgh Squealers all combined to make this the worst movie of all time. He hasn't seen a lot of movies. That would be my guess. The movie literally has a character watching a college football game on TV, the Pittsburgh Squealers, with the same exact score that played in pieces during the tennis match, and that's pretty cool. For what feels like half the runtime, though, and then it switches to creative murders that would make Tom Savini jealous, perfectly capturing that Italian horror vibe of, we have no money for story, but we got this whole box of prosthetics. Shot on a super low budget in Italy, but set in America with that classic dub dialogue disconnect. D'Amato somehow makes this film both mind-numbingly slow and shockingly brutal. You'd be fighting sleep during the stalking scenes, then suddenly, man, wide awake when the gore hits like a bucket of red paint to the face. The final scene for sure was haunting, and the camera panning across everyone's faces during it was brilliant. Bravo, man.
It comes from the Alps. The blasts of warm air cause snow avalanches. When it blows, there are those who say it causes madness.
1985's Creepers is what we're going to talk about. And before Dario Argento made the Stendhal Syndrome, he gave us Phenomena, released in butchered form as Creepers in the US because Americans couldn't handle the full Italian art horror experience, and we barely can today. Jennifer Connelly, fresh off her innocent role in Once Upon a Time in America, plays a girl at a Swiss boarding school who can telepathically communicate with insects and teams up with Donald Pleasance and his helper chimpanzee to solve a series of brutal murders involving a deformed killer. And look, man, that sentence exists in this world. Whenever I see a random chimp pop up in a movie, I think of the movie Max My Love. I think that's what it's called. I'll add a clip here. I gotta go find it. And it really is, and at the same time is not worth looking up. Long story short, he was involved in an affair with a married woman, Max the chimpanzee. Either way, you heard that right. Academy Award nominee Donald Pleasance, a psychic teenage girl, and a razor-wielding chimp versus a mystery maniac. All set to a banging Goblin and Iron Maiden soundtrack that absolutely rips. Let's talk about the reviews, man. 10 out of 10, superb. I liked everything about this movie. The supernatural element with fantasy feeling is awesome. Killer on the loose at a Swiss boarding school? Wowzers. This movie holds up. It has some outdated effects, but that's a nitpick for when this movie was made. I agree, man. Now for a 1 out of 10. I cannot believe how campy this movie is with horrible script and acting. Laughed throughout it. Look, man, sold. You had me. You had me in the first sentence. Now, this was peak what the hell is happening Argento. He threw every idea at the wall. Sleepwalking, forensic entomology, a maggot-filled corpse pool. That chimp. And somehow made it work through sheer visual style and commitment to the insanity. Showing again that Italian horror didn't need to make too much sense as long as it looked incredible and the kills were creative. Unrelated, at about 15 minutes in, the story Jennifer tells about her mother abandoning her was an actual story from Dario Argento's own childhood, and maybe that's why Argento cites this as one of his favorite movies. The US version hacked out like 30 minutes and replaced half the original Goblin score, turning a surreal masterpiece into a somewhat confusing mess, which is exactly what you got if you rented from your local video store. But even butchered, that finale with Jennifer covered in flies while a chimp goes ham on the killer remains absolutely unforgettable, and that's not a spoiler. That's a lie. Of course, that is a spoiler. I apologize.
Dario Argento's Creepers.
Now, gang, did I miss your favorite video store obscurity? Drop it in the comments below, because you know everyone is always hunting for that next deep cut recommendation. I am doing my damnedest. And if you survive this list without getting PTSD flashbacks in your childhood VHS collection, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more forgotten nightmares to excavate from the bargain bins of horror history. Man, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you. And as always, stay cool.